is my new best friend.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say out of this. This makes me like Tom DeLonge more than I ever have, and even just discovering that I actually do like their music, but that Tom DeLonge is one of us, all right? He's into he's on tour. He's like, let's go look for a Bigfoot. He's actually doing things, writing books.
Badass, dude. That is bad. When you're a multi-million-dollar band, you have this gigantic tour going on. You're like, hey guys, we're in Washington State right now. Let's go hunt for Bigfoot before we have to play tonight. That's badass, dude.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. They said they get baked and then they go look for UFOs. It sounds like they're unbelievers. Like they're probably our listeners.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
100%.
It's one thing to have like a video, like he said, like Mark said. He showed me this video that was clearly horseshit. And like, you and I, and you and I, and you and I, I'm looking at all of you across the room from me. We all know when we see a really stupid video. But the fact that he's still willing to, I'd rather have that than somebody who was just like, no, fuck that, let's just get fucking wasted at the bar. Like, I would rather talk about a fake video and then maybe also get wasted at the bar after.
I would rather get drunk and go hang out in the TNT bunkers in Point Pleasant, look for Mothman, than go to the bar and get drunk.
Yes, which Absolutely. I hope to do later this year.
Absolutely. And, I think Joe Rogan sounded like if you showed him any alien, anything that you thought was a UFO video, he'd be like, this looks like total horse shit. You don't know, man. I mean, some of them might, some of them don't. A
lot of them do.
It's a mixed
the ones
bag.
that matter, yeah.
If Tom DeLonge is showing me a UFO video, I'm going to perk up a little. I'm like, this guy, he knows his cigarette machines. However you pronounce cigarette machines.
I was like, what did he just say?
Cigarette machines. I like Tom DeLonge. This is kind of, and I know things aren't going too well to the stars, is kind of going to the shit, but we're going to support Tom a little bit. I'm not giving him any money, but I got your back. I got your back, bro. You seem like one of us. You always kind of have. It just, you seem like you are getting gaslighted by people who want to take advantage of you, which is troublesome. But if any one of us was in that situation where government officials and people in the know were coming to us thinking we could be a voice for the things we are actually passionate about, I could see it happening to any of us. If in some weird world they are trusting me to let knowledge out and write books about it, man, of course I would be jumping on it. I would. I feel bad for Tom, but I also respect him, and I think he's a cool guy. And the drummer comes up cool. I know they're not even together anymore, and he's not throwing Tom under the bus. He's just stating facts, which are actually cool.
Yeah, I mean he's deeming it a little bit like, oh, he's a little bit childish, but Tom's heart's in the right place, is what I feel. He's earnest in his endeavors. He's not being shady. He's got his heart in the right place. At least.
Yeah. Yeah, the only thing is that he just might be being taken advantage of. And, True. I mean, on this list of rockers, I mean, Jonas, Sammy Hagar. Now, unfortunately, Tom doesn't really Tom's just getting information, man. He's not like Elvis, who was born under an alien sky, or Sammy Hagar getting downloaded with wirelessly with wire. He's not, man. Imagine if Tom DeLonge disappeared in the desert. I mean,
I don't want that to happen. I don't want to imagine that. That's a very dark timeline.
It is, and but imagine if it did. I mean, that would just be it. Like everyone would believe then. But so it seems like these stories have kind of gotten progressively stupider, right? Right?
Well, once you're brought in the Jonas Brothers, does that really qualify as
like, I already apologized for that, all right? I know that they're technically not rockers, but there was a guitar on that one song, I guess. All right.
You started with the cold case file, and so, I mean, after that, anything is lighter compared to a dude disappeared and was never found again.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna go on and we're gonna go out on a bit of a, well, you'll see, a little more serious one of these. All right, I know I'll put some really stupid ones out there, Sammy Hagar, whatever. But let's hear now from an 80s metal band called Excalibur.
Without further ado, let's hear it loud out there for Excalibur!
Hellbent for leather. All right. This is a story of a man named Rusty Hudson, a member of the band Excalibur. Now, the song you heard was not from Rusty's Excalibur. They broke up in 1980. Sorry. This song is from another band called Excalibur in a Battle of the Bands from 1984 in Cincinnati, Ohio. Pretty cool, right, Brendan?
Yeah. Amazeballs.
Now, this is from this. They played. This is a Battle of the Bands, 1984, in Edgewater Raceway. Have you ever been to Edgewater Raceway?
I have never been to Edgewater Raceway.
Man, it must have been really cool in 1984. Yeah, so apologies. The guy I'm talking about, Rusty Hudson. He was in a band called Excalibur. This is just another band. This is the best I could get for a band called Excalibur. But I'm not gonna not have a musical intro. I assume that their Excalibur also played Hellbent for Leather. Let's just say that.
That was the best. That was the best you could get for Excalibur.
That was, of course.
You question his source skills? Of course, it's the best he could get.
I'm going to swerve it now, and we're going to talk about Rusty Hudson. And some of these stories might have been ridiculous, but Rusty Hudson is a for real alien experiencing rocker. And I'm going to tell you guys a little story here. This is the words of Rusty coming from me, Russ. All right. Although I may have had more than one encounter, I shall recount only the details of the most clear-cut experience. It occurred around June 21st, 1980. I was then 23 years old and had been on the road for 6 weeks with a pop band called Excalibur. We were playing in hotels and resorts and sending money home to pay off college loans. That week we were staying in a motel in the West Florida town of Plant City. Our actual job was in nearby Tampa, but after finishing each night at 1 a.m., we would drive back to our accommodation in Plant City. We had been in town a few days when the incident occurred. We had just completed our last set and had arrived back at the motel. Usually, after entertaining people for 4 hours, we would be wide awake and spend the rest of the night talking, reading books, hanging out at the pool, or going to an all-night diner. Drugs were not a part of our band lifestyle. People who enjoyed our music would occasionally buy us a drink or two after a show, but we were pretty square as bands go. On that particular night, I had dropped off my instrument in the room I was sharing with the bassist and had gone to visit Mark and Jay, two other members of the group who were staying in an adjacent room. We were engrossed in conversation when we were suddenly disturbed by what looked like a brief, sputtering flash of light in the room. My first thought was that it must have been the glare of a passing car's headlights, but it wasn't. We were on the second floor of the motel, and the curtains at the room's only windows were closed. I quickly scanned the room for an explanation. It was a typical American hotel room. The entrance was to my left, next to a large front window with the curtains drawn. Beyond the door was a balcony walkway with entrances to the other rooms. I was leaning against a sort of vanity, facing two double beds, between which was a nightstand with a lamp. Okay, this is too much description. Mark sat on the bed to my left. Jay was reclining in the other to my right. There was a television to my immediate left, turned on but with the sound off. In a few places to my right was a wash basin with a large mirror on the left behind it. To the left, this was the bathroom. I remember saying, "Did you see that?" And Mark and Jay replied that they had. A few seconds later, something impossible happened. An intensely bright white light seemed to burst out of the back of the room by the mirror and wash basin, as if someone had suddenly opened a door to the sun. Then, in the midst of this glare, I saw movement. and then two very large slanted black eyes. Tiny pinpoints of reflected light seemed to swim in them. I do not know if I screamed. It was all as if I was retreating into some safe space in my mind. What was occurring was insane, impossible. I was beginning to convince myself that I was hallucinating when I heard a strange sound. I turned, in what seemed like slow motion, to see Jay's fear-controlled face screaming something. I turned further and saw Mark shaking as if in shock. I then turned back towards the light in that same terrible slow motion and looked into the face that I will never forget as long as I live. A huge, pale head with enormous, black, glistening eyes and an enigmatic Mona Lisa smile was coming towards me. I could not move. My head was filled with a sound that had been building in intensity since the light first appeared. It was a high-pitched buzzing, a hollow hum, not unlike the sound of a hornet's nest, but much louder. I looked into the eyes. Then I was sitting at the foot of my bed in my motel room, looking at a test pattern on the television. I was exhausted. I could not figure out how it got back to my room. I could recall some strange images, but my weariness overpowered any train of thought, and I was sound asleep almost instantly. I slept until late afternoon. When I finally got out of bed, I began to remember some of the previous night's events. I felt emotionally muted, a bit numb. I went and found Jay and Mark in their room, which looked normal, but which made me feel extremely nervous. I asked them if they remembered anything funny from the night before. They looked at each other, then at me. Jay said, "You mean that light? That light that came out the mirror?" I felt as though the floor was giving way, like the whole world was going helplessly topsy-turvy. Mark said, "Yeah, I saw it too." There was a pause. Jay said, "I don't think we should talk about this." Mark and I nodded in assent, and that was the end of it. So this is a crazy experience that Rusty Hudson and his band, not the Excalibur, such a basic band name. I'm sorry. I gotta.
Maybe it's talking about his exes, you know.
Maybe
a little bit the Excalibur. The caliber of the exes. I mean, that's what I thought.
But this guy has a legit alien experience with witnesses, with his bandmates, where he has missing time, so far as we've heard, a strange light. He sees. I like how he says the aliens have a Mona Lisa smile.
I love that. That made me
I didn't like that. I mean, if I'm gonna deal with some aliens, I don't want them to look like a piece of art. Like that I actually like,
with like
unless
they
fill me with
a cocky smile on their face.
Yeah, that little that little smirk, like she knows better than you. Like, oh, this is your first time. Okay, get the fuck out of here.
Well, as Rusty stated that when they nodded in assent, and that was the end of it. But guess what? Only it wasn't. In the years that followed, I was plagued by recurring nightmares and insomnia. Over and over, I would wake up in the middle of the night in a panic, scanning the room for anything out of place. Sometimes I would get out of bed and look around the apartment, though I had no idea what I was looking for. I could no longer sleep on my back without suffering anxiety attacks. I began doodling a strange face with big black eyes on the margins of notebooks and newspapers. I felt as though I was waiting for something to happen. The band had broken up a few weeks after the incident. I eventually lost track of Jay and seldom saw Mark. When we did see each other, we avoided mentioning that night. A few years later, I returned to university life. I continued to sketch the face that haunted my dreams and wrote short stories about strange beings, bright lights, and inexplicable displacements. One Sunday morning in February 1987, a girlfriend of mine was over having brunch with me. I had told her my little story a year before, and she attributed it to my overactive imagination. She had often expressed distaste at my drawings of what she called that horrid face. After eating, she was having a coffee and reading the New York Times book review when she suddenly jumped up and almost dropped the paper. I looked up at her in surprise, and she slowly flipped the paper around to reveal a full-page book advertisement adorned with a face just like the one I had been sketching for the last 7 years. Within days, I had both Bud Hopkins' book Intruders and Whitley Strieber's